Hey everyone, Monique here with We Save Bees. We're up on this roof today because there are some bees inside. Luckily the bees only moved in 4 days ago, so this should be a pretty smooth removal. The bees were able to access the roof through the vent holes in the eaves. Oftentimes there are screens placed over these vents, but the holes in the mesh are big enough that the bees can actually still get through. Normally with this type of project we'd run a trap out, but since the resident is getting bees inside their home, we decided to go with something that would be a little more immediate. So to open up this roof, we start by taking off the rows of shingles one at a time and pulling up all the roofing nails. With the shingles set aside, we can begin cutting out the tar paper. We want to cut the tar paper out slightly larger than our workspace. With the tar paper removed, I do a quick tap test to see if I can confirm the location of the bees. When the hive is much older, you can actually hear the density in the amount of comb they've built, but in this case, since the hive is so young, I could only hear buzzing. After removing the nails, we make our cuts right along the beams. After the board is cut loose, we can begin to pry it open with our hive tools. Always helpful to have 2 of these on hand to wiggle back and forth until you can get it open enough to get your fingers under. But before we open it completely, we're going to do some smoke, just because a few bees start flying out and we want to make sure that we're pushing them forward and not further back up into the roof. Just some light smoke here is good, just enough to let them know we're coming and to stay away from this side of the roof. And now it's showtime. You see him? Mm-hmm. Oh, damn. We're gonna move him away. We move the cutout away from the location of the original hive. This way we know the queen will be with the portion on the plywood and not lost somewhere in the roof. While Marley gets ready to transfer the bees, I work quickly to keep the bees from retreating. I need to keep them from going left, right, and further into the roof. Meanwhile, Marley begins framing up the sheets of comb. While they're doing this, they're looking for sheets of comb that have eggs and larvae, or brood. This is what actually gets the bees to go with us. You can see that as soon as we place this box in front of them that has their brood framed up, the bees start marching almost immediately. It's something really cool to see in person that not many people get to see or experience. I sped it up for the sake of this video because the march in total probably took about 10 minutes, but still cool to see the entire process and see the numbers dwindle as the bees migrate into the box. And this is why we're called bee wranglers, not just beekeepers. Every time I see the march happen like this, I picture some cattle dogs herding a flock of sheep through a pasture. You want to use the smoke as a way to gently guide and direct the bees without creating too much chaos. So you can see Marley smoking from behind and around the sides, just enough to corral the bees and push them into their box. Now, the bees would do this on their own as well, but it would just take a lot longer for them to slowly move into the box. The smoke is just a way for us to move the process along a little quicker. A lot of the times the work we're doing is all about efficiency. For one, we want to work with the natural tendencies of the bees and actually have them move themselves into the box. This way we can guarantee that they're going to want to stay with us in the box and not just take flight and swarm the next time we let them out. And then again, back to efficiency. We do on average, depending on the size and type of project, at least 5 to 7 projects a day per team. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. But the more quickly and efficiently we can move, the more removals and the more bees we can save in a day. And at the end of the day, that's the goal. We save bees. And as you're watching this, I just want to note that we did not look for the queen. And we usually don't. We're pretty excited and happy when we do get a chance to see her, because it's always fun to see, but she's honestly not our priority. Since the brood is the key to the survival of the colony, the bees will actually prioritize taking care of the brood, and once the queen notices that the bees have moved into the box, she will follow suit. Once the bees are clear of the wax on the plywood, we can begin to scrape this off. The reason we want to do this is because the wax actually leaves behind a smell. We can smell it, but the bees can definitely smell it even better. And if we were to put it just back in place as is, it would actually be more likely to attract more bees to the same area in the future. So we make sure to clean off as much of the wax and other bee product as possible, and then we go ahead and we coat the plywood to help mask the scent of any bee pheromones left behind. With all the bees from the plywood now into the box, we shift over to the original entrance where the bees were getting in. And you can see almost immediately, no smoke needed, the bees just start marching. There's a clump of bees on the outside as well. Marley starts smoking from below, pushing all the bees through the vents and up and into the box. And once the bees are all moved into the box, I will actually screen off the vents from the inside. This is going to ensure that the bees physically cannot access the same bay in the roof again. So even if it did still have the familiar scent of bees, no bees will be able to physically access the space. And as a second piece of barrier, we're going to fill the cavity with some insulation just to eat up the empty space. Once that's all said and done, we'll just go ahead and put the roof back in reverse order, but I'm not going to bother showing that part because it's not as fun as watching the bees. But basically we'll put the plywood back in place, nail it back to the beams, lay down more tar paper, put the shingles back in place, and leave the roof looking just as good as when we took it apart. That's all for this one, and we'll see you on our next bee adventure.